Warm welcome to this special episode of ETGovernment's Good Governance and Better Security Leadership Series. My name is Anoop Verma. Today, our guest for this special episode is Dr. Mukesh Aghi. He is the President and CEO of US-India Strategic Partnership Forum, USISPF. USISPF is working to strengthen the economic and geopolitical cooperation between India and the United States by building a platform where the major political and financial stakeholders can come together and hold deliberations with the hope of reaching a consensus. Donald Trump has won the election, and on January 20, he'll take over as the America's 47th president. The topic of today's conversation with Dr. Aghi is the impact that Donald Trump's political vision and policies might have on India's economy. Welcome, Dr. Aghi.
Thank you very much, Anoop.
It is often said that President Biden is a globalist and President Trump is a nationalist. So how different can Trump's nationalist policies, economic policies in context of India be different from what we experienced in the 4 years of Biden presidency?
Well, you have to understand Biden was a consensus builder. He had a structural approach to every issue, especially on geopolitics, on global supply chain, on the issue of COVID itself. So you have a president who basically built a team, consensus and issues and drove it. Now you have Trump, who is much more nationalistic. He's trying to put America first. That means if he has to break the China, and his approach will be much more transactional than structural. So I think both in their approach are different. But as far as trying to strengthen America, both wanted to strengthen America, but one had a much more structural approach. Other is going to have a very transactional approach.
No, Donald Trump calls for America First agenda, which is like India's, it can be compared to the Swadeshi movement in India. Narendra Modi calls for Make in India. So is there any possibility of synergy between America First and Make in India? Because both countries want to make in their own country. So how do they cooperate?
No, absolutely. I think there's a lot of synergy there because when you talk about Make in America and Buy America, you have to understand the industrial base has moved out of America. It has moved to China. And so the question really becomes is, how do you de-risk your supply chain from China and move it to United States? So Trump has announced 60% duties on Chinese goods coming in and probably 20% on Indian goods coming in, just to basically expedite manufacturing back into US. The challenge we have is that you can't do this overnight. You don't have the skills. You don't have the drive that. So it will take certain time and processes and effort to drive that. So that's where India's Make in India becomes critical because India can focus on what I call is certain aspect of manufacturing which America will not do it. For example, US is focused on chip manufacturing, which is 5 and below nanometer chips. India is focused on 15 and above, almost 60 nanometer. So there is a synergy between the two. So I think you will see as time goes by that there'll be collaboration, cooperation, and yes, there will be disruption on India part also. And I think India has the maturity to manage that and take that forward.
One of the agendas of Donald Trump is that he wants to bring back the manufacturing industry in America. So from China, because much of it has, as you rightly pointed out, has moved into China. So can he do it in a 4-year time span that he has? And how does India fit into that game plan?
So I think you have to understand that it took almost 20 years for manufacturing to move out of US into China.
Yes.
4 years is a very, very short term to move back everything. But what you can do is focus on high-end critical item, which binds and supports the economy, supports the industrial structure, especially on the defense side, focus on national security items such as chips, and other aspects which are going to define your space exploration. So those can be brought back. The question is do you have enough skills, enough engineers to build that? And I think the answer today is no. You have to bring those skills also. And I think that's where you have India coming in and playing a pivotal role on President Trump's vision of America first. You can build a lot of manufacturing de-risk from China into India because India is part of the Quad. And one of the suggestions I've had for some time is you can take geopolitical alignment into economic alignment, and that means manufacturing alignment. You have four countries: United States, Japan, Australia, and India, and they make almost $35 trillion worth of GDP. And geopolitically they align in every aspect, which is China. Now you go down further down into that alignment and look at technology alignment. We are collaborating on quantum, AI, cyber. We're cooperating on pharma, for example, API moving from China into India. And so when you look at from that perspective, you can go a step further down and say, how can we collaborate within the Quad on the manufacturing side also? And pick up items which you will not manufacture in the United States. Let India take the lead. Today, India supplies 39% of the prescription drugs in the United States. They are cheap. They are saving a lot of money to the US government. So I think there is an opportunity here for India and the United States to explore as to how you can focus on manufacturing, which basically supports America first and make in India first also.
Okay. You talked about Quad, which was formed in during the first term of Trump. Basically, as he was recognizing China as an emerging threat to his own country, and India participated due to common threat perception. So, what kind of role can Quad play in the second presidency, Trump's second presidency?
Quad can play a much more critical role than the first term, because first term, it is President Trump who basically elevated the Quad summit to head of states and moved it into a much more structured environment. President Biden brought in a lot of agreements among the Quad countries. And so India has signed most of those Quad agreements. And India is now providing from ship repair to medical assistance and other aspects of the Quad. So I think from the first term of President Trump and now starting, the Quad has moved on as a much more structured organization than a loosely held organization. So I think Quad will play a pivotal role. It will play a much more pivotal role supporting President Trump's America First agenda also.
In the last 10 years, India has done some significant successes in 6G, green propulsion technologies, cyber technologies, IT, and space technologies, precision engineering. So, can India be in a position to benefit from Trump administration's development goals in these areas?
No, absolutely. You have to understand you have a political agenda, and then companies have the economic agenda. Yes, companies will try to push a political agenda, but at the end of the day, they have to be accountable to their shareholders. And shareholders are saying, hey, how do I basically get more innovation out, be much more competitive, be much more efficient? And India plays a pivotal role. I'll give you an example of global capability centers. You have almost 1,700 global capability centers in India doing tremendous amount of research and R&D in those centers. You look at companies like Qualcomm, 50% of the IP is coming out of India. It's the same true for Samsung also. So what we are seeing is, for example, every chip in the world now is being designed in India. Yes, we lack the fab capability, but the design capability is there. So I think the world realizes that the talent, the skills, the cost effective of those resources needs to be leveraged if you are going to become competitive, not only just a company, but also as a country. So yes, you will see the Trump administration leveraging that, because without that, you can't move the engine here very efficiently.
You talked about the GCCs. They are a big success story in the country. But much of the IP that they are generating, that goes to the foreign multinationals. They are not being with the startups or the Indian companies. So can that change somehow? So that Indians become the owner of the IP, so that and because the real money is in the IP,
No, no,
the money.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it does take time. You look at Japan, look at Korea, you look at China, where the US companies brought in the IP, they created the IP and held the IP. But then, as I call the research culture, as far as between the global capability centers and the local ecosystem percolated, you started seeing more and more IP coming in. I mean, so you look at some of the Indian startups, some of the quality stuff they're doing on the defense side, space side, uh, they are generating a lot of good IP. So I think it does take time for that culture to come in, and I'm very confident that it will come in the next 10 years.
In the first Trump presidency, there was significant spike in India's military imports from USA. But now India is aiming to become a defense exporter. Last time, the defense minister had tweeted that our defense exports had touched around 23,000 crore, and this year it's expected to go beyond 35,000 crore. So, how does the military equipment relationship between India and US evolve in the next 4 years?
So I think you have to look at geopolitically. You have a nation which is China, which is very hegemonic, which is going to be very dominant, and it basically wants Asia Pacific to be its first sphere of influence, and it will not tolerate rise of India the way India wants it to be. So you will see the stress factor coming in between the two countries. So same with US. For US to basically stop China's aggressive posture, dominance on the world, it has to manage that stress point in Asia Pacific. And it has to leverage India, Japan, Australia, South Korea from that perspective. So that means you'll have to build a strong industrial base. What we have learned from the war in Ukraine and Russia is countries which have a large industrial base can sustain a long term war. And if you don't have that, and that's where India becomes very pivotal because you have a population which is still very young, population which is acquiring skills itself, and what we will see is India's industrial base becoming bigger and bigger. You look at joint ventures between Airbus and Tata's, or Lockheed and Tata, or Boeing and other partners in India. You look at part of the components of Javelin missiles, components of Stinger missiles. They are being built in India. Skorsky helicopter, they are being built in India itself. So India is becoming part of the US global supply chain in the defense sector. Yes, as time goes by, you will see India exporting some of these goods at a much more efficient and cost effective manner. So we see that trend also picking up. India's exports, for example, to Philippines and to other countries have gone up. So I strongly believe that with time, India will become a very, very strong defense export market to the rest of the world.
One major concern in India at this moment is the aero engine. The negotiations between HAL and GE have not made any headway, and there's a lot of confusion over what is the real reason for which this technology is not coming into India. Despite there was a congressional waiver on transfer of technology for G414 aero engine, and there was also signing of MOU for G404 and G414. So India's LCA MK1 project is already delayed because delays in supply of these engines. So can we expect some kind of movement in this area during the Trump presidency?
Well, I don't know the real cost, but as my understanding goes, GE is also suffering from his own supply chain. As I understand, there are 18 different suppliers who have delayed their production and component to the engine. It's a complex technology requiring multiple companies to come in and basically manufacture at the same time, same pace, so you can integrate that.
So
And that
you're saying
supply
that the
chain,
problem is logistical, not political.
It's a logistical problem, not a political problem, because the deal is between company GE to HAL. And yes, the export license has to be given. That has been cleared by the Congress. So it is not a political issue. It is a logistical issue.
ISET program was initiated during the Biden administration for movement of biotechnology, semiconductors, and space cooperation. So, with his focus on rebuilding India's own R&D and manufacturing, can we expect Donald Trump to support India's expectations from ISET?
Well, you have to understand the style of President Donald Trump on dealing. Uh, when you look at when he canceled GSP during his first term, his question was, "What are we getting in return?" And he will also ask the same question on the ISET, some of the jewels of US technologies, which are being moved to India itself. He will ask a question, what are we getting in return? So we have to be prepared to see some kind of, I don't know, use the word turbulence, but at least questioning, are we doing the right thing for the United States? So India has to be prepared to deal with that issue.
One of the major problems that the Biden administration faces is the Ukraine war and the Middle East war. So, what kind of changes can we expect from Trump in these two areas?
You have to understand uh, President Trump does not like war, but at the
Yes.
same time, he wants to use the strength of his military to dictate things. So while he will probably pressure Putin and Zelensky to come to some terms, because US will not continue supplying billions of dollars of equipment to Ukraine itself. So I think you will see a momentum picking up there. In the case of Middle East, you have to understand that there's not much love with Iran. And what we will see is that he will give free hand to Israel to finish off the Houthis, the Hamas, and Hezbollah, so these proxies don't keep on creating some kind of instability in the Middle East. You have to understand, it's not just the Israelis. You talk to the Saudis, you talk to the UAEs, they all want these proxies powers to be basically finished off. So at least there's more sense of a stability in the Middle East. And I think once you have that, you'll see a massive economic growth story coming through, and India will be a beneficiary of that.
Elon Musk was one of the earliest associates of Donald Trump during this campaign, and some people are also crediting him for the victory. Now, his Starlink satellite internet service is expected to launch in India soon. So, what kind of investments, job creation opportunities can we expect from his companies? Because Tesla is also coming here, as far as media reports are
Well,
saying
it'll
that.
be interesting to see because there is a kind of a disagreement between Geo approach to
Yes,
broadband, where they're saying there should be an auction,
yes,
and whereas the government of India is saying, "Hey, we'll go with the allocation," which is being supported by Elon Musk. So I think that tussle continues, and what we see is a major effort being put in by both the geo lobby, and you see Elon Musk leveraging Trump from that perspective and driving that. At the end of the day, you have to understand that whoever can provide cheaper, efficient, reliable uh, broadband to consumer is a win for the consumer itself. So the government of India has to take a call. What's the right approach? Is it allocation or auction? Because at the end of the day, they are the one who will be looked at from every providing goods and services to the Indian consumer itself. So I think that tussle will continue. Now, in regards to the Tesla, Elon Musk was very keen. The Chinese pressured him. They gave him all kind of carrots in China, so he backed off. But now, with the stress point happening between US and China under Trump, it will impact Tesla's plant in China. The question is how much will the Chinese use Elon Musk to put pressure on Trump? How much will Elon Musk relent to the Chinese pressure? Because you have to understand, he also has plants in Berlin, he has plants in Fremont. And what we understand is a lot of components now are being procured from India for these plants itself. So we're seeing slowly de-risking of supply chain for Elon Musk also happening from China into India. So we will see as the administration comes in, but Elon Musk does have a lot of influence. He put in almost $135 million in Trump's campaign. He used basically X to leverage that. So I think he does have certain leverage with the new administration.
Thank you, Dr. Aghi. Very nice talking to you and telling us so much about these new developments.
Well, thank you very much, Anoop. Good talking to you. Take
Thank you.
care. Bye-bye.